Good evening! Every year we get a big indie 3D platformer, from last year's Penny's Big Breakaway to 2022's Tinykin, and there's many more on the horizon like The Big Catch. The Switch 2 is getting Donkey Kong Bonanza from Nintendo, and surely a new 3D Mario won't be too far behind. But not everyone can afford one of those, and you're probably hoping that Ruffy and the Riverside can be that margarine substitute that still tastes close enough to the original that you can save yourself about $550 or so. Look, I'm sure it's gonna be great, but Nintendo's pricing gives me zero FOMO. Unless it's the fear of missing out of having a roof over my head, fear of living in a trash can like Oscar the Grouch. How does Oscar feel when people toss bags of dog shit in his home? Does it accelerate his nihilist worldview, or does he like it like a nasty pervert? Ruminate on that as I talk about Ruffy and the Riverside. Ruffy's just a humble assistant for the town painter, with a not-so-humble power. He has the ability to copy one material and paste it in place of another. So if there's a waterfall, you can copy a climbing vine and make it a vine fall. One day a mole named Sir Egler arrives in town and whisks Ruffy away to go on a great quest. That great quest? Well, apparently it involves dooming the world, because Egler has Ruffy help him look for these chunks of marble that have reality-altering properties, and doing so unleashes this ancient evil Rubik's Cube named Groll, who slurps up all the magical rocks and starts messing with the world. In order to undo his devastation, Ruffy will have to heal the World Core, which essentially governs all of existence. As a way of hiding it in plain sight, the World Core is powered by the equivalent of a Hollywood Hills sign, and so Ruffy will have to retrieve each of the sacred letters needed to power that sign and bring the World Core back to full strength. I know this all sounds very ridiculous, but that's obviously on purpose. The game is silly and goofy from start to finish, in a way that is often very charming. You find out where to go next by consulting a Wheel of Fortune. You win a skateboarding contest by using your powers to cheat. The game demands not to be taken seriously, and it shouldn't. The only problem I really have with the storytelling is that the English localization is a bit too awkwardly formal and verbose at times. There's a sort of stiff politeness to a lot of dialogue, regardless of the emotion or situation, and so I think the script could maybe use one more polish round to punch it up. When it comes to the swapping mechanics, you hold and release the right bumper to aim and copy a material, then use the right trigger to aim and paste that material onto eligible objects. You might be a little bummed out to realize that not every object and material are compatible with each other, and a lot of objects in the world will only yield a color and not a material itself. There are, of course, certain limitations that were bound to be baked into the design. It'd be crazy to try to turn a wall into water, for example, at least on an indie budget anyway, so I respect these limitations as necessary ones. What is a little harder for me to respect is the way in which puzzles practically place their solutions right on their doorstep. If you need to change something into something else, you can be guaranteed that the material you'll need is just a couple of steps away. This pretty much takes any real thought process out of the puzzle solving and makes it more of a round peg and round hole. The developer likely designed the puzzles this way because you have a time limit whenever copying a material, but I would argue that the time limit is really not that necessary. In fact, if you remove the time limit and move necessary materials a bit further away, you'd encourage more exploration and investigation. I also think that certain puzzles could have had multiple solutions. For example, there's this water wheel that is turning the wrong way in the northern lands, which has caused a little furry friend to get trapped at the top of a backwards waterfall. The solution is to go inside the mill and uncover an arrow texture going in the correct direction, so that the flow of water can go back to normal. However, you can also change the water texture itself to mud, and I thought, as I tried that, hey, this could work as well. Certainly the water wheel would not perform as efficiently, and the waterfall turned mudfall would not have the speed to shoot upwards. But of course, nothing happens when you do that. The water wheel just keeps on churning normally. I don't know, I think that the game could stand to reward some out-of-the-box thinking. Without that, I'm reminded a lot of Super Scribblenauts, a game that claimed to let you type anything and everything into the game's interpreter, but actually only had very specific solutions the developer wanted you to use. The restraints just make the game feel a lot less creative. Now, one thing you can do that's pretty creative is change the look of the game. As you solve certain important puzzles in the world, you'll be rewarded with dream stones, which each unlock a global texture in the game that you can replace with your own art. So you could collect all the dream stones and make the game look like a real acid trip nightmare if you wanted to. And as far as collectibles go, there are a decent number of them to find. Dream stones are generally found by finding these obelisks and inputting a certain pattern onto them using your swap ability. While you can pay the NPC to tell you where the pattern can be found, you really don't need to do that ever, because it's almost always within the line of sight of the obelisk. So again, that's an opportunity for exploration cut at the ankles. The furry friend I mentioned earlier is an e-toy, and you can find 30 of them around the world, usually by solving an environmental puzzle or breaking them out of crates. There are also 30 butterflies in the world to collect, which you bring back to this fox to catalog. Now in the early going, some of the butterflies do require a bit of effort to reach, but by the time you reach the northern lands, they really just start being right out in the open, which was a little disappointing. There are also legendary gemstones to find, which Angler can tell you more about back in the town. So if you like collecting things in 3D platformers, Ruffy and the Riverside has more than enough to satiate you. I'd also say that the variety in the game is pretty decent. In addition to everything I've mentioned, you also get access to a hay bale wheel, which you can use to speed around the world, grind on rails, and do tricks. One specific level, in fact, has you doing tricks on a half pipe to rack up points. And though I was not very good at this minigame, I will concede that this was likely a skill issue and not a problem with the game design itself. You'll also use that bale in races, making use of turbo pads and rails to stay ahead of the competition. There's even a part that's a tribute to Crash Bandicoot where you're chased towards the camera. And there are these wall paintings that you can hop into like Super Mario Odyssey, and influence from the outside with your swap power. Really, the only area where the game lacks in variety is in the swapping mechanics themselves, which, I mean, is a pretty major problem. A lot of puzzle solutions just come down to turn thing into wood or turn thing into stone. And I don't know, after a few hours, the novelty really started to wear off when you realize just how few materials are actually swappable. One thing I won't complain about though is the art direction, which is beautiful. I love the drawn-on paper animations. They all look great and have this wild manic energy to them. Just look at some of the critters you pass by, they're going crazy. It gives the game a rambunctious vibe, which is complemented by the cutesy sounds and grunts the characters make. Ruffy's got some spunky yaws and ways. And the music has that turn-of-the-century vibe that maybe feels more PS2 than N64, but still feels appropriate as a retro platformer soundtrack. I love how bustling the town is, with lots of guys just running around, hanging out on rooftops, swimming in the river. It feels like a fun, energetic place to live. That town's got a few amenities as well, like a roulette that will add permanent stat buffs to your capes if you have the cash, as well as a heart vendor that can increase your maximum hearts for a price. Now, prior to release, the heart containers never increase in price as you buy them, and you can continue to buy them after reaching the maximum of 10 hearts. It just won't add anymore. So these are both definite errors that need to be fixed. I'm not sure if that's the case yet after version 1.0, but it certainly doesn't make sense for heart containers to be the same price the entire game, because I was able to max out my hearts within the first 2 hours of gameplay, and that doesn't seem like it's intentional. Combine that with automatic health regen, and you'll pretty much never die aside from an occasional fall, which itself will be pretty rare, no pun intended, because this is not what I'd call an especially platform-heavy platformer. You've got the world map, which is somewhat flat and separates major areas by rail grinds, and then there are smaller linear levels you travel to. A couple of the linear levels have some platforming challenges, but these levels are shockingly short. The mountain level in particular ended at what I thought was going to be the halfway point, so these are not the dense, discrete stages of a Banjo-Kazooie or a Mario 64. They're more of a small change of pace. Closing this one out, I think that Ruffy and the Riverside is best suited for either younger audiences or people who just want a cozy experience. You aren't going to be challenged much at all, and there's not a lot of actual dexterous jumping required. It's more a game you play for the vibes. The silly storytelling, the pencil-drawn aesthetic, and the copious collectibles will give you plenty to smile about, but if you want a little more bite, you may want to look into games like Lunistis or Super Sammy Roll. The closest actual comparison to this game would probably be Cavern of Dreams, so if you liked that game, Ruffy is a lot similar, but wider in scope with a larger world. If that sounds appealing to you, then you'll probably enjoy Ruffy the Riverside quite a bit. As someone who derives sick pleasure from the Champion's Road from Mario 3D World, I gotta have a bit more teeth, so I can chew on them and spit out a pearl. My dissatisfaction is largely the result of my own personal preference, so I think I can still recommend the game, but hopefully now you know what you're getting into. Thanks for watching this review. You're a good person for watching it, and you should definitely build a moral identity around my videos. If you really want to get parasocial, you can subscribe to my Patreon where you can get early access to my reviews, as well as a community Discord where me and other fans hang out. A very special thanks to the indie darlings who helped finance this, like Rob Scott, Tyler McBride, Thumpus, Nick Shalark, Tony Domenico, and Game Trekker. Going forward, I'm gonna try to alternate indie game and animation reviews, so next week you can look forward to a review of something animated, and then on the 22nd, I'll be reviewing the Castlevania tribute Chronicles of the Wolf. If that sounds like a good time, then go ahead and click subscribe and click the bell to get notified when a new video drops. Until next time, you'll find me in another castle.